Hey there, MRA, my real Africanas. This is Maria Juice, the real Africanas, and welcome to my channel. On this channel, I talk about African history, the field of African studies, and current African affairs, right? So, I just wanted to hop on here right quick and talk about this video that I was watching yesterday where President Nana Akufo-Addo was addressing the African Union, right? So he was giving a speech about the importance of democratic values, and he was talking about, all of the stuff that is happening in West Africa now with the coups and everything, right? But one thing that he said really stood out to me, and it was a quote that he quoted that Winston Churchill had said, right? And it had something to do about with democracy. It basically said something like democracy is the worst system except for all of the others in the world, or something to that extent, right? But anyway, it wasn't the quote so much that was the problem. It was the fact that when President Addo was saying the quote, he actually said that Winston Churchill was a great British wartime leader, right? He basically called Winston Churchill great, right? So I was paying attention to him talk, but I really wasn't looking at the phone. So when he said that, right, I just kind of did a double take, and looked at my phone, and I said, what did he say? I said, I know he didn't just call Winston Churchill, a great wartime leader, right? And the way he said it, right, it just rolled so effortlessly off of his tongue, right? And he kind of had a little, smirk on his face, right? Almost like a little smile while he was saying it. And, I thought to myself, I said, that is ridiculous, right? I said, that is the problem right now. That is the problem why we are seeing what we are seeing in West Africa, right? With all of these young leaders carrying out these coup d'etats, right? And it's because of this, this disconnect that exists between this old guard of leaders and these young people, right? For some reason, these, older African leaders, and I won't just say African leaders, but Black leaders all throughout the diaspora, for some reason, they just are so bent on being fair and diplomatic that, they allow themselves to say things that really does not sit well with this new generation, right? I mean, this man, Winston Churchill, he was not great, right? I mean, from a British or maybe even a European perspective, and even some of them have said otherwise. He may have been great, but he's not great in the eyes of most African and in the eyes of other people of color. If you look at his track record and you look at the atrocities that he did to African people while he was Prime Minister of Britain, there's no way that you can say this man was great. I mean, you think about the horrible things that he did to the Mau Mau in Kenya, right? People who were fighting for the liberation of the Kenyan people. You think about the genital mutilation, right? That was carried out under his leadership and under his approval. You think about the fact that he was putting African people in Kenya in concentration camps, right? So how does that make this man great, right? You think about what he did to the Indian people, right? And how he contributed to the starvation of those people, right? So when you think about the things that this man has done, I don't know how President Addo could even fix his mouth to say that this was a great leader, right? And again, this is the kind of thing that is just so problematic to me. That again, these African diaspora leaders, they can just continue to skin and grin and say these type of things because it is so important to them that they have this diplomatic relationship with these countries, when these countries could care less about what type of relationship that they have with African nations and other black nations, as long as they are in control of what it is they want to be in control of, right? And again, like I say, back to Churchill, he during his military service, right before he became prime minister, he fought in the what is that? The Anglo-Egyptian War or the Anglo-Sudanese War, right? He also fought in the First Boer War, right? So when you look at that, he was fighting against African people. He was fighting against African people who were fighting for their liberation, right? And even when he was fighting against the Boers, it wasn't like he was fighting to free black South Africans from their oppression, right? He was fighting so that Britain could control the oppression, right? That the Boers were in control of. So there is no way that this man could be or should be thought of as great by any African leader, right? I would remember this other video that I was watching once before, where this black activist from the UK, right? She was a Black Lives activist, Black Lives Matter activist, and she was debating this historian from the UK about Churchill, right? The same thing, how he was going, just saying how glorious Winston Churchill was and talking about all the good things that, he did, but he was denying what this Black Lives Matter activist was saying, which was some of the same things that I just finished talking about. She was talking about what he did in Kenya. She was talking about the genital mutilation, of Mau Mau freedom fighters, right? She was talking about all of the things that he had done in India, right? But the only thing about that, she was kind of acquiescent to what Piers Morgan was saying, because he was also trying to defend the actions of Winston Churchill and the things that he had done against people, right? In the name of British imperialism, right? So she was kind of acquiescing and saying, okay, yeah, that might, but no, I'm not acquiescing to anything, because there's no way that this man could be thought of as great with all of the torture, the mayhem, the divisiveness and destruction that he and the British Empire has carried out throughout the world, right? Piers Morgan, on this particular segment, he was trying to compare Nelson Mandela being on the international terrorism list with the things that Winston Churchill had done, right? And, that's why I say, especially Piers Morgan too, I don't really know how to take him, because he's another one who is always trying to defend the undefensible. He's always trying to defend what Europeans, especially Britons, have done in their attempt to colonize the world. And there is no excuse for those things, right? I mean, he tried to talk about it was just that time and the racist views that Churchill had. The fact that he said that black people were savages, or that African people were savages, right? And how he had talked about the Indian people in that same, with that same type of language, right? That he was basically a sign of the times, right? No, he was a sign of the times, but he was a sign of the times for European people, what they thought then and what many of them still think now, right? For some reason, he wants us to believe that time has moved on, but we continue to hear this type of ugly racist rhetoric over and over and over again when it comes to, African people, especially African people who live in European countries, right? So again, he was talking about Nelson Mandela, and he was trying to compare the two. How are you going to compare Nelson Mandela, who was fighting to free his people from the heinous system of apartheid, with somebody who was basically the progenitor of these type of systems, again, all throughout the world? There is no comparison, right? They try to throw shade and throw these little, type of not allegories, but these type of narratives out there, to try to somehow make a comparison, right? But when there is really no comparison, right? The facts are the facts. And the fact is, Winston Churchill was not a great leader. He was racist. He was a bigot. He was a imperialist, right? Who did nothing but further the agenda of British colonization. That's it. And colonization was not a good system for the people who were under it, no matter what, again, these people try to make make us believe, right? And for them to actually try to make us believe that it was, just shows you how unempathetic and how ungenuine they are when they try to apologize, for what was done to people under colonial rule, right? The only reason why many of them apologize is because they want something else, right? They need something else. And now they just have to figure out another way to get it, right? So I'm going to end this by saying, or focusing on another quote that Winston Churchill said, right? Winston Churchill also said that the history of Britain was going to be glorious and great because he was going to write it, right? Well, I don't think he ever counted on the fact that there would be social media one day, right? And that African people would be telling their own stories. Well, I'm here to tell you that British history is not great, right? It's full of exploitation. It's full of tyranny. It's full of murder. It's full of bigotry. And it's not that great, Mr. Winston Churchill. So I am here to tell you that, and to let you know that those narratives that you have put out there to stand as greatness, they no longer stand, right? So tell me what you think, okay? Tell me, do you think what you think about what President Addo said about Winston Churchill? And also tell me what you think about President Addo's leadership, right? Has he been a good president for Ghana, or is he just another African leader who bends to the will of the West, right? Because, I have defended President Addo on a number of occasions, right? Because I don't just want to, have a blanket assessment of him, right? Because there's some things that I do agree with him on, right? I do agree with him on the call for reparations. And I think that it takes a lot of courage and bravery to stand up and say that, right? Because in most cases, you're going to be that lone voice out there by yourself calling for reparations, right? I do support him and the call for African Americans to come back to the continent, right? I thought that was a good thing, the year of return, and I still think it's a good thing, right? I supported him in some of the projects that he was doing before COVID, right? Before COVID hit, he was breaking ground on a factory to produce grain, right? To try to control the grain production in Ghana and in West Africa, right? He was also doing a project on the Tema port, right? He was opening up the Tema port for trade with Burkina Faso, right? I thought that was a good thing. And also he had built some schools, and they were focusing on STEM, right? And he had broke ground for more schools to be developed. So I also thought that was a good thing, right? So again, sometimes, I just don't know. I don't know what his angle is, and I don't know what the angle is of some of these African leaders, but I do know that they're going to see plenty more of what they are seeing in West Africa if they, don't get it together, and if they don't worry more about having a good rapport with their citizens instead of worrying about having this diplomatic rapport with these Western nations, right? So I am Maria Juve, the real Africanist. Again, tell me what you think about President Addo's comments about Churchill, and also tell me what you think about his presidencies. About his presidency, right? Don't forget to like, to share, to comment, and subscribe if you haven't already done so. Peace, fight the power, and I'll see you next time.